I'm Liz Forbat and I'm lead author on an article published by the Journal of Family Therapy, which is reporting therapists' views of manuals. So the idea for the paper came about because we know that there's increasing push from service commissioners and service providers to know that the therapies that are being provided really are based in best evidence. And we were curious about, well, so there's been a big drive really to provide more manualised interventions, but what do therapists actually think and feel about using manuals? So we did a systematic review. The methods for the paper are written in detail in the paper, but essentially what we did was to look at key databases, which enabled us to shortlist 12 papers which reported therapists' first-hand experiences of using manuals. So we looked at, well, what does this actually tell us? So we looked for themes and categories within those 12 papers, and what we found were three kind of key issues. One was about people's previous exposure to manuals, and at the nub of that is that if people have used manuals, they're more positive about them. So essentially people that have had training, for example doctorates in clinical psychology, or people that are trained in cognitive behavioural therapy, are much more likely to have used manuals and are much more likely to have positive views of them. In addition to that, people that have been involved in developing manuals and perhaps have worked with researchers and provided feedback on drafts and so on are also much more positive about manuals than people that haven't. So that's one of the key things. Exposure to manuals increases people's positivity and sort of receptivity to using manuals. The second finding from the analysis was that there are some specific kind of therapist characteristics which seem to be associated with more positive or more negative views of manuals. So some of those are around age and years of experience. So what we found in a number of the papers, I think 3 papers report these kind of variables about age and years of experience, are that therapists under the age of 45 are more likely to be positive about using manuals, and therapists with fewer years of experience are more likely to be positive. So, and those were 2 different studies, so we weren't able to sort of say younger, or not younger, but more recent trainees and younger people were more positive, but independently those factors seem to be an issue. One paper published in the States was reporting that black male therapists had more negative views than white female therapists. So there may be some other kind of cultural and gender variables being acted out there too. The third element about people's receptivity to using manuals was about the kind of work that people were doing. So unsurprisingly to you, I'm sure, people with training in CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, were much more positively inclined towards their manualised approaches than people with training in eclectic, integrative or psychoanalytic, psychodynamic approaches. So what does all this tell us? Those 3 things about therapist characteristics, exposure to manuals, and then this third factor about the kind of discipline in which people are trained. Well, essentially it tells us that if we're going to be playing the game, which governments and funders want us to, about providing treatments which have their evidence in randomised control trials or other kind of formal mechanisms for providing standardised treatments, then we really need to be exposing trainees to manuals early on so that they're getting a real sense about what manuals are, how to use them, and how flexible and adaptive they might be. It also means that perhaps, given that we know that therapists that have been involved in developing manuals feel more positively about them, that we need to get more close ties between academics and clinicians in developing these manuals. So to paraphrase my mum, who used to say this a lot in relation to broad beans, you don't know if you've not tried them. So I guess at the heart of the findings for this paper is that if we really want to increase people's positivity towards manuals, we need to be using them, teaching with them, training with them, and applying them in practice.